In a move that was widely anticipated, the Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy, after a special cabinet meet today, has announced that his government will trigger Article 155 to curb Catalonia's autonomy. But what would triggering Article 155 mean for Catalonia, and how exactly will it impact the crisis following the controversial referendum? Take a look at this report.
Primero, a proceder al cese del presidente de la Generalitat de Cataluña, del vicepresidente y de los consejeros que integran el Consejo de Gobierno de la Generalitat de Cataluña. El ejercicio de dichas funciones corresponderá a los órganos o autoridades que a tal efecto cree.
With these words, the Spanish Prime Minister today announced that the process to strip Catalonia of its autonomy will be initiated by his government. After the deadline given to the Catalan leader Carles Puigdemont lapsed on Thursday, by when Madrid had demanded that Puigdemont should clarify as to what his document on Monday meant and whether the document was tantamount to the declaration of Catalonian independence, Mariano Rajoy had been met with ambiguity by the Catalan leadership. But the Spanish Prime Minister today left nothing to chance.
La facultad de disolver, si el Senado así lo decide, el Parlamento de Cataluña pasa al presidente del Gobierno. El presidente del Gobierno, si el Senado así lo decide, tendrá que convocar elecciones en un plazo máximo de 6 meses. Sin embargo, mi voluntad, la mía, es hacerlo tan pronto como recuperemos la normalidad.
Prime Minister Rajoy has announced several concrete measures which he intends to take to restore what he terms as constitutional order. The autonomous government of Catalonia, headed by Carles Puigdemont, will be dissolved and fresh elections will be held in the near future to elect a new autonomous government for the Catalonian province. Till that point of time, Madrid will suspend Catalonia's autonomy and govern it directly. As the Catalonian Assembly, headed by Carles Puigdemont, has been democratically elected, Mariano Rajoy has submitted the proposals for a ratification by the Senate. With the opposition and even the head of the state, King Felipe VI, strongly backing him, Mariano Rajoy, by sending his measures for an approval by the Senate, has again given time for Puigdemont to strike a conciliatory note. But the question is, will the Catalan leaders meet Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy halfway to resolve the Catalonian crisis? Bureau Report, WION.
Joining me on the broadcast to talk more about that story is Spanish professor at the Newcastle University in London, Alejandro Quiroga. Professor Quiroga, thank you very much for joining us here on WION. What exactly happens next for Catalonia following the Prime Minister Rajoy's statement today?
It's very difficult to tell, actually, what is going to happen. I mean, according to what Mariano Rajoy said, now the Catalan government is going to be dissolved and elections are going to be called. The initial idea of Mariano Rajoy was to call elections in January, so in 3 months' time. But now, at this point, the Spanish government should take over all autonomic institutions in Catalonia, meaning the television, the media, the police, the health system. So it's quite complicated, the whole process. But the idea of the Spanish government is essentially to take over and to impose direct rule.
Right. Professor, will this work, you feel, as Spain hopes, in terms of quelling the rebellion there in Catalonia, or do you think it's only going to fan sentiments further?
Again, it doesn't look like that could actually decrease the support for independence, and probably some people in Catalonia that were not very happy with the pro-independence movement now, because of the imposition of direct rule, will begin to think that independence is an option. Having said that, it is true that opinions are very divided in Catalonia, and the latest opinion polls that we had were openly against the declaration of independence. Just barely 30% of Catalans would actually support what they call a unilateral declaration of independence. So it's difficult to tell, but probably, certainly won't help if Catalonia within the sense that, you know, people would probably think that independence now is a good idea, more people than they thought. Yes, for instance.
Right. We seem to be having a bit of trouble connecting with you on your audio. Let me see if we can fix that before I take our next question across to the professor. But just for those of you who are joining in this evening on the broadcast, the big story we're tracking at the top of 9 p.m. tonight is the fact that the Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy has decided to crack down on the Catalonia independence movement. It was a move that was widely anticipated after that special cabinet meet today. He announced that his government will trigger Article 155 to curb Catalonia's autonomy. Right, let's go back to the professor who's joining us on the broadcast. Professor Quiroga, a lot of businesses and banks have decided to move out of Catalonia following the violence, following the independence referendum. Do you think that the government is sensing a change in sentiment in terms of the fact that people are worried that with business gone, what's the independence worth?
Well, in a way, what the independence movement gave some Catalans was sort of a practical utopia, so an idea that within the economic crisis there was some hope. I don't think that the movement of these banks and big companies outside Catalonia are going to change those who actually think that pro-independence was a very good option. Those who were not very sure could actually think twice. But I think at this point the positions are so clear for both those supporting the independence of Catalonia and those Catalans against the independence of Catalonia, that those things are not going to make a huge impact actually in people's minds.
Right, but the positions also seems to be very clear when it comes to European powers. They're very categorically saying that they want a united Spain. Do you think that's a factor that needs to be looked at as well?
Oh, no, of course. It is very important because for the Catalan government, the only real option was to internationalize the conflict. It was to get support from other European countries, especially from European Union, and they've been, in the main, they've been enabled to gain international support. That's well why the Spanish government has been so cautious to act within the constitution and within the constitutional framework, because they don't want to have any sort of to antagonize anyone else in Europe. So it is very, very important, the position of other powers. And that was the main goal of the pro-independence Catalan movement, to internationalize the conflict. Yeah.
Absolutely. And of course, there was widespread criticism of Spain in terms of how it handled that independence vote. A lot of people came out saying that there was a use of excessive violence in the crackdown. Do you think Spain's going to be conscious of that? We're already seeing visuals of a number of protesters making their way onto the streets after Prime Minister Rajoy's statement today.
Yeah, the Spanish government made a very, very big mistake with the use of violence against the referendum. The footage that came out all over the world was very, very damaging for the reputation of the Spanish government. And I think if they're wise enough, if they're intelligent enough, they would try to avoid the use of further violence. It's also, difficult to predict, but certainly the message that the Spanish government sent during the referendum was a very, very wrong message, actually.